probably try to cross 50 CISO roundtables this year since we started this episode in June of 2022, just to give back to the community and share the, bring in all the, industry experts like we have today. And it has turned into a very good community, and we really, we're really proud of it. And just to, basically have conversations around what's going on in the market. And of course, earlier we used to think it was like moving fast. Now it's like moving at it's like spaceship speed, I guess, for the last few months. And, every day Anthropic keeps releasing something new, and every startup, I don't know what the startup guys are thinking. Sumeet will be able to tell because I know he's in one of those area. And so with that, let me introduce I'm founder and CEO of Akitra. So I've been also in the cybersecurity industry, for a while, over 20 plus years, with my first startup being a firewall security company to current one doing a lot of security compliance, risk management, AI governance, and all related tools platform company. And then we have Sumeet here, who's founder, serial entrepreneur, and currently he's founder of Aptori, and also is our customer. We appreciate that. And earlier he was founder of one company sold to Cisco, another to Juniper, and now I don't know where he's taking this one. He can tell you. Sumeet, it will be great to have you elaborate a little bit more on your background for the team.
Yeah. Thank you, Naveen. So Sumeet here, currently working on Aptori. And what we do is build security agents to do runtime validation. Essentially find real-time risk in your apps, in your agents, in the interactions in the APIs. And it's a very exciting space. So much of the traffic has moved from like humans to agents, and APIs are smack in the middle of all of these interactions, and we're helping secure them. So definitely moving at light speed, as Naveen is saying.
And also, Sumeet is actually Dr. Sumeet Singh, so he has a PhD from San
Actually,
Diego.
Naveen, I never finished.
Oh, you never finished? Okay, all
No,
right.
I
Sorry to say
never I
that.
never went back. I mean, I took what was to be my thesis and turned it into my first startup, but I never
Oh,
There you
actually
go.
finished.
It's
there
called
you
the
go.
applicable PhD, right?
At least you turned in the thesis. I
Or
left even before.
applied PhD.
Applied PhD, yeah.
I
There you go.
dropped out before I was about to start thesis. You guys knew my head was gonna blow up.
Yeah.
So from Santa Barbara, and which is obviously right on the beach, so you can tell why I had to quit the PhD program.
You should go back now.
Yeah. Well, I know. I'll think about it. So
Yeah.
now our next panelist is Tony. Tony has been again in cybersecurity. So Tony, I just wanted to see, I know you have a lot of insights to provide, but maybe I wanted to see if in 30 seconds you can tell about yourself.
Sure.
That's a test.
No worries. Yeah.
Very put on the spot.
You took 5 seconds off my 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Tony Zirnoon. I've been in cyber, since when it was called antivirus. So, calculate that 25, 26 years plus. I was a practitioner, worked at Intel at Xilinx the first time, first full-time hire. I moved on to the, solutions side, both on the risk management, a company called Protiviti. We helped build the Bay Area practice. And then I moved into tech marketing, competitive intel. My background is mostly in data protection. So the days of DLP. And then the last 10, 15 years, I've been more focused on solving for the 1 + 1 = 3, whether it's strategic partnerships, channel, or as of late, helping startups with advisory, go to market. And as of last year, I'm the chief business officer at a company called Airrived, where I helped as an advisor. And we are an agentic AI platform, which we target to business leaders that want to, solve their agentic transformation, particularly CISOs and CIOs, and they want to do it without AI engineers.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. And then we have our new panelist, Elissa. First time, thank you for being here on the panel, and we're looking forward to your insights. So it'll be great. Elissa has been CISO, vCISOs for various companies. I would rather have Elissa kind of talk about her background.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to start, joining the group here. I've been in security for over 10 years. Most recently was leading technology and security at Cointelegraph, then CTO, and also doing security work for Yanix, the public company, and currently CISO for Cyganix, which is a subsidiary of Jovia Financial Credit Union. So I'm available to do CISO work through them for pretty much any like qualified company, and just really excited about what's going on in the space and to talk about it with everyone here.
Yeah. Thank you, Elissa. Really appreciate it. So with that, let's get started. So key is we are going to focus on 3 areas. One is usually the CISO's role, and hearing from Elissa as well as Tony, and of course Sumeet. He interacts with a number of them on how the role has been evolving, and then we'll focus a lot in this whole agentic part, agentic AI, security, and especially on the application side here today. And the third one will be any new product solutions or any issues or challenges you all are facing, plus number of our colleagues are here, including Jason, Randy, and other folks. So I'd love to have them also provide their insights and questions. So Elissa, the first question, I think it'll be great to start with you, is how do you feel, you've been in the world of CISOs for a while. So how do you think the CISO role have evolved? Like, let's say since last 5 years and now, and where do you think it's going?
Well, the CISO role is a very difficult one now, and not only CISO, CTO as well. Like as agentic security is evolving and agentic engineering is evolving, it's on the CISOs and also the CTOs to make decisions and to know what to do, but nobody knows what to do. The best practices aren't yet established. So this is a very exciting and interesting, but also chaotic time for everyone in an engineering leadership role. I attend and I host a lot of events for like CTOs and CISOs, and the reason we're coming together is to just try and make sense of what's happening. For CISOs, notably though, the AI products that people want to use are often inappropriate to the business, right? So you have, for example, like engineers or business people inside a credit union asking to use like ChatGPT, and maybe they want to upload like customer data to it, and the CISO has to say no. But then it's not obvious what to use instead. So I think CISOs are in a very difficult place. Like CISOs always have to hold that line between what's permitted and not permitted. And the CISO is always in a difficult position saying no to the board and the CEO and other people in the organization when it comes to everything from like, shadow IT to now it's AI agents. But there isn't some obvious solution. We're talking later about product solutions. There isn't some obvious solution for agentic security that is obviously okay for regulated businesses. There isn't some market winner, right? We don't have like the Veracode or we don't have that yet. It's just like startups that are competing for the space. So my heart goes out to every CISO who needs to, try and find these solutions or just hold the line to keep saying no and worry that shadow IT will creep up. That's my take on this.
Yeah, thank you, Elissa. So Tony, I know you played a role more on business as well as the security side. So what has been your experience in terms of the evolution of the role of a CISO, like it's in past 5 years and going forward?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as was just shared, I think we are in uncharted waters, and I think we kind of skip couple seasons, right? And it's not incremental change, right? I think the CISOs are probably going to be called CISO, right? There's going to be a technology aspect of it. They are moving away from being the technology, technical guardian to the AI governor, right? And and basically what they are seeing themselves in a position that they have to be enforcing these guardrails and governances as a speed, warp speed that these things are being generated, right? 78% have already created dedicated security teams for agents, and about 40 of them are already exploring some sort of a agentic AI or, AI tools, some of it being wrappers, some of it being native. So that they went to bed and they woke up and their role just changed, right? So there is a T in their role now, right? So if they're not getting involved in how these agents are being built, they're stuck having to govern them coming in, right? Now they're inheriting an agency problem. You have digital personas, digital agents coming into your environments. You have no idea where they came in. They bypass your governance, they bypass your IT governance, and now you're responsible for the AI governance. That's the conversation I'm having with them. And they wish they had a DeLorean, they could go back, right? It's like, how did this happen?
Thank you, Tony. Sumeet, you've been more on the, like, as a vendor, I guess mostly on the vendor side, but you've interacted with a lot of CISOs, CIOs. What have you seen? And you've been in startups, so I think it'll be great to hear for you and as well as all the number of startup folks in the attendance, for them to hear your insights, what you have seen, how they have evolved, and where they're going, and how probably the founders should interact with them. You're on mute, Sumeet.
Since we've mostly been in the kind of like the securing the application, securing the workflow space, really the biggest shift that we've seen is that everybody at every layer of the organization, engineering or non-engineering, everybody's become a developer, right? Like prompts have turned essentially everybody into a developer, and all of a sudden software is being produced so fast without let's just say complete knowledge even of what is being produced and what is being consumed. So securing what is then produced becomes I feel a really, really big challenge. So we're definitely having some of those conversations, right? Like how to secure software products as they are being produced at light speed with AI. So that's been one of the big areas that we've been talking about, that we've been focused on.
Great. Thank you, Sumeet. So why don't we focus on the main theme, which is more of all this agentic AI, as well as its impact around application security. So, Sumeet, I think it'll be great if you can first define, how you see, because you are kind of more in the thick of that in terms of your solution, if I understand from at a high level. Otherwise, correct me if I'm wrong. And
Yep.
so that way we can take the discussion forward. How do you see? I mean, you can kind of focus on a lot of this. How about these agents which are working in your apps, or agents using other apps, and how do they behave, and what happens when they go, if something goes wrong in terms of product, who owns it, whether it's product folks, security folks, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, so from our perspective, right? I mean, AI is on both sides of the equation. It's definitely on the side, and we hear about this every day. It's definitely on the side where as far as like making the software is concerned. I mean, we all use AI to write code now, right? To the point where first we used it as assistive, but now we are moving to the point where we're just saying, hey, here's the outcome we are looking for, and entire softwares are being produced for us. So definitely we've seen crazy amounts of acceleration on the production side. But now what's happening is we are also seeing that the consumer of this software that we're putting out is turning out to be agents. And that is, I think, the bigger challenge with what's in store for us, right? We're just starting to get a handle on how to put the guardrails and governance around the code that's being produced. But now with agents consuming this software, both things are happening at light speed, right? Like things are getting probably consumed as quickly as you're putting them out, and they're getting consumed at machine speed, not at human speed. Nobody's clicking on dashboards any longer, right? It's AI consuming, means it's direct access to APIs, means it becomes even kind of like a bigger challenge to put governance or guardrails around the information that you're putting out. So I think previously, historically, AppSec has been very focused on the world of static, doing code reviews, doing secure code reviews. That was, I feel, the previous generation of AppSec. Now, I believe, going forward, it's more runtime. Like, how are these systems behaving at runtime? How are others interacting with these systems? What are the guardrails we can put in place to make sure that the behavior is how we expect it to be? And, I believe it's like a whole new challenge. It's not the traditional AppSec that we are using today. It's a whole new thing.
Thank you, Sumeet. Elissa, would you like to take a shot at it?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So part of your question is who owns this, right? Who's responsible? And there's who's actually responsible inside the organization, and there's who's responsible when things go wrong. And that's not necessarily the person who has the authority, which is also classic in security. So we see in large companies that are well organized, using all the best practices. Amazon is right now a very good example because they had a major incident that they're moving ahead with agentic engineering practices, and then occasionally things go wrong, right? So who's blamed when things go wrong? Maybe it's the agent's fault, but like it's really hard to blame the agent, right? Like someone's head has to roll. That's just the nature of these things. And who is that at the end of the day? It's politics, right? It's not actually the people up the food chain who are making the policy decisions, the architectural decisions that lead to these outcomes, right? Like software engineering outcomes, and when things go wrong, are always the result of like the architectural structure of all of that, not the individual like end developer who happens to make some small mistake. Like the system has to be architected to give them to have guardrails that prevent, a sleepy developer from making a catastrophic mistake, right? Like it has to be well architected. So the architects aren't the people who end up being responsible. It's, whatever end user programmer happened to make some small mistake. It's not really his or her fault. But that's at the end of the day who's blamed for it. My real takeaway here is simply that we haven't figured out how to do these systems in a way that's safe yet. I'm optimistic we'll eventually get there. But between now and then, I feel like Tony said, like, where's the time machine back? I have some nostalgia for the good old days when things were much simpler. And certainly on the security side, it's really the Wild West, right? We're figuring it all out right now. It's very exciting, but also like pretty scary.
Thank you, Elissa. Tony, what's your take on it?
I think, going back to how things are shifting, right? The CISOs who were responsible for systems and applications now are responsible for, AI governance, right? Their role is changed, right? Back in the day, they used to come to risk management, right, and communication. So they were like both a program manager, now they're program, the product developers in a sense, right? They have to develop this technology aspect of it. They have to understand the difference between the Gen AI, agentic, AI agents, apps, and ultimately AGI. And if they don't understand it, many of them are already out of depth because they're also going to have personal liability to the point of the responsibility and accountability. I'll give you an example. When I was at Xilinx, I was the responsible for the firewalls. We brought them all in and we had the process, right? So the web ops team or the business would put a request, they went through their approval, the ServiceNow ticket or whatever it was, back then it was Remedy, and would come in and then based on approvals, you would make a change in the firewall. Well, if the wrong port was open or it wasn't open, the application wouldn't work. And then there would be another ticket opened up because it created outage, right? Then the product wouldn't be, released on time, or an exposure would happen. We would have a corrective action request, right? A CARB that we need to go, and we'd have postmortems. But it was very clear: either the request was wrong, right, or the implementer was wrong, or the decision process, something was, clear, and we would change the process. Today, the same role is now an agentic application. During SOX, right, we had to do separation duties, and you had like firemons and algo6 that came unmonitored that there was audit going on. And now the agentic apps, we have customers that ask us to look at the tickets and automatically create that based on their SOPs and their risk acceptance level. If it's low, go ahead and do it. If it's high, do a human in the loop. If something goes wrong, now you can't just open up the car right? Because if Tony wasn't there on Monday and Tony didn't authenticate and tie that particular agent to Tony, and that problem is leading into the NHI problem, which is a continuance of NHI we had in the cloud, there's a huge gap. So that attribution is not there. So if you don't know who's responsible for that agent operating it, who's responsible for invoking it, and who's responsible for training it, right? Where is the corrective action that needs to go happen, let alone, some repercussions. But ultimately, the CISO will bear the liability. So the D&O insurance is going to go up. And many of these CISOs are like, wait a minute, I never signed up for this. Yeah, I got my driver license, but now you're being asking me to I don't know, drive fast bullet trains or whatever it is, right? I don't know how to do this, and I'm supposed to be running it. So there's a lot of unknown. The NHI, this binding of the human personas to an agent or multiple agents, is a problem that hasn't been done. And then the other part of it that Sumeet, you were talking about, I think it's time for us to really go back and revisit what was shift left, which all of us got into it, and the SDLC. I think it has its days. It is no longer acceptable to just think about shift left. I think we need to think about shift before, right? We need to really go back. And if you're not getting involved in that early, how these agents are being developed and put those governances and those guardrails, as you're developing, those agents are already going to be learning bad skills. They learn. It's kind of like a kid that sits in front of MTV and starts learning 4-letter words. You can't get that out of his head. It's already trained that way. All you can do is observability and policy informants after that and give them timeouts, but they're already trained that way. That's what I think keeps me awake, and many of the CISOs and others, practitioners that I talk to, that's a concern. That's a big friction point. How do I prevent this? Like a shift left, like I'll call it a shift before. And that requires you to change your role as the CISO. You have to become a pseudo CTO, as was shared earlier. And same, there is no CTO anymore in the software company, right? You're probably already seeing those titles. There are CTPOs, right? If you are a CTO that doesn't know how to build products, then what kind of CTO are you? Now I think it's all going to get combined. We're all going to have to share that concern, whichever role you're taking on. You need to know how this rocket was built before you launch it. Before you bring these agents to your organization, you need to know how are they going to behave. Almost like a pilot that wants to take off on any kind of airplane. There's a pre-flight checklist. There's probably been done simulations. There've probably been wind tunnels. And there's a background check of the crew. There is a psych eval of the captain, right? And every flight, there's a pre-flight checklist. We're not doing that. And we're expecting that things will just go hunky-dory and everything's okay. And the proof is there. AWS is one. But if you go back into November, there were already multiple incidents that many giants who have their agent versus, like ServiceNow had one. I think it was called Body Snatchers, and then so did Salesforce. I'm in conversations with many of those folks and say, look, we need to go further.
Looks like we lost you.
I'll jump in and just say I really agree here that we need the security teams to be involved early in the process. It can't just be that things get developed and then security's kind of like, hey, wait, what happened?
Yeah. Thank you, Elissa.
I mean, security has never been early in history ever. Security.
I'm not saying historically it's true. I'm saying that we would like it.
Yeah.
It's like an insurance, right? Buying an insurance.
Exactly, right? Like that's the, yeah.
Yeah. So we have other folks in the audience who are also CISOs and experienced. So I see Randy here. Hey, Randy, thank you for joining. So what are your insights in terms of this whole, in the application layer, in terms of the security and agents being there as well as agentic security part? Any insights you would like to share from your experience, what you're seeing, how you're solving these problems at the organizations you're involved with or otherwise?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. For those that don't know me, I'm Randy Bard. I started out my career in the mid-90s. My CISO career in early 2000, worked for companies like WebEx, Cisco, Qualys, Zoom, and a few other companies as their CISO. Um, the interesting thing that we talked about is the transition of a CISO. Early on when I started, we were very technical to being a little bit more from hands-on to being a little bit more business. And then now the biggest challenge we have in front of us is speed, and the speed of trying to get ourselves up to the point where we understand AI. We understand that we don't know enough about guardrails, guidelines, frameworks, and more importantly, how we can level set or get our teams up to the level that we're at and make those hard decisions that maybe they're not the right team members right now for where we're on the journey we're at. And more importantly, we are in a position to leverage some of this stuff to automate and implement, but we're still faced with the same challenges that were faced even early on my career. For example, we've been incrementally doing better in finding vulnerabilities, and more so now with the with Anthropic's introduction of Mythos. But the problem that we've had is the still growing need and drive towards trying to triage that and remediate and prioritize, which is still the bottleneck in getting it in place. We talked about shift left. One of the things we're looking at right now is how do we automate that entire process and leverage agents to be able to do it. At the same time, realizing that agents, given full access, as I have access, does not have that context aware of what it shouldn't do. And so having that persona, you need to be able to limit that persona to only do what you need to do instead of just giving standard access. And more importantly, Tony mentioned this earlier, and that is who owns that agent, and making sure that there's certain responsibilities that are in place. When it comes to responsibility overall on issues, it's always the CISO. If the CISO didn't identify the risk, if the CISO didn't work on putting the right plans in place to mitigate that threat or remove that threat, didn't do a good enough job in communicating that over to the board of the executive team, and everybody seems surprised, then it really does come back down to the CISO, and it's their responsibility. Sorry, I don't want to go into too much more, but let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions or anybody would like to add on top of that.
Yeah, I see Jason. Jason is here also. Hey, Jason, I would love to hear. Jason is also been in CISO and also Senior Director of Security and Compliance at Techion. So Jason, do you have any, great to hear your insights or any questions you have and to share with the team here in how you're seeing the agent's role and the security around it in the application layer, if you're involved with that.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm Jason Texan. I lead GRC and IT at Techion. Like Randy, I've been in industry for over 20 years, and I've held roles in security as well as IT. So I'm in a unique position to see or to be on both sides. And in terms of using agentic or AI in security, again, in my unique position, we're on IT. Our role is to enable our users to be able to use all the different flavors of AI and use them in a safe way. But then on the security and compliance side is how do we safeguard and keep the company secure? And those presents unique challenges. We could be in the business of saying no, you can't use these tools, but the approach that we've taken a bit more cautious approach and really looked into the data and see how our employees are using AI and what types of information is potentially being used for or accidentally uploaded to personal AI tools or versus enterprise tools. So it's a balance. I think there's lots of comments about CISOs have a difficult role in today's day and age, and I think that's just going to continue to grow. But however, we are starting to see and use AI in a way that allows us to be a bit more proactive instead of reactive. We still aren't going to be able to match machine speed that AI moves, but again, for us, it's a constant challenge, and we're trying to balance how do we enable our employees, our engineers, to adopt AI versus us securing the environment. So,
thank you, Jason. Really appreciate it. So I see here we have Shantanu also has been involved in cybersecurity. Shantanu, thank you for joining from down under. I think, are you still in down under or somewhere else now? So it'll be good to hear your insights or any questions you have. I know you're on mute. So maybe you can introduce yourself also a couple of lines. Shantanu, you're on mute.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself now. Thank you very much, Naveen, for allowing me to, put my thoughts in. So yes, with the advent of AI, things are shifting in many different directions based on how an organization actually picks up the AI piece. I actually work at a cusp of cybersecurity as well as in AI, wherein I produce solutions to have AI optimization on one hand, and then collaborating it with a data protection platform for the data that the AI engines deal with and things like that. So that's where my solution comes in. I have a business around that. I have recently seen about 95% improvement in inter-token latency based on, obviously some specific parameters we can discuss later if somebody is interested. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about myself. And in terms of the context, like I said, AI is actually pulling various, pulling organizations in different directions simultaneously. And so it's not simply like a shift left. I do agree with the opinions which others have said, but I think it is sometimes more complex than just the shift left or shift before, like what Tony said. And, the others have been actually putting in. So it's a very complex confluence that we are dealing with. And I think most of the organizations haven't yet figured out what's the best way of dealing with the interference of AI in this current world. So that's my two thoughts around it.
All right, thank you. And how about, like, I just wanted to invite, sorry, go ahead. Who's that?
I was just going to add a quick comment to Shantanu, which I think wholeheartedly agree. I think the good news, Shantanu, is that this is not the first time we're seeing this movie. It's just happening at a fast forward speed, right? I mean, we saw this, how many times before, right? We saw it in the digital transformation journeys, and we went through. First was virtualization, and you had all these different concepts of this abstraction layer come in, new layer came in, and we start having talks about virtualization, security virtualization. Then we moved to the cloud security for cloud. And now we have AI for security and security for AI, the double-edged sword. While the adversaries are using, storm attacks, right? So we want AI, but we're bringing this new attack surface. And I think we need to go back to the first principles, right? The basics. And if you look at this problem as an agency problem, I think we have a better chance to solving it instead of looking at an application problem, right? We can't just pen test our way and AI firewall our way in doing that, where these guys are coming in pre-built, the whole conversation we had. I think the problem is bifurcated, right? There's a before, there's a during and after situation where these agents are. And part of the problem is that in most enterprises that do, our C-suites, they understand the value of standardization and consolidation. We've done in our routing, we've done in our CRM, we've done in our network security, we've done on endpoint security. But every time I have a conversation with someone in your role, and we say, hey, what platform are you using? Just even for creating these agents, for governing, it's a secondary. But the best answer is many, right? Use a little bit of NA8 here. This group uses OpenAI. This guy uses Gemini. This guy's jumping on Cloud Mythos. And the promise is that, oh my God, the sky's falling and CrowdStrike is no more. Or there goes Veracode, there goes check marks. And the reality, I think it is that, we know that's not going to happen. We already have a scarcity of talent, especially on the AppSec side, which I don't think any CISO will even fathom the idea of forcing their AppSec guys to suddenly become AI engineers, right? So there's got to be there's a huge leap of finding 40,000 holes that have been out there, which is great value. It's like a powerful tool. But suddenly having a powerful, power tool, a carpenter does not make you, right? We still need to get that and create abstraction layers, standardization layers that we can put these folks in operating these power tools and figure out how to go from finding the holes to make let's use an analogy of doing a home inspection, right? There's a big gap between finding holes in your roof in a tool shed until the family moves in, right? And has to do where the holes are the branches going to fall off, so on and so forth, and what's the weather like, right? And I think we need to figure that shift right movement as well. So I think if we can figure out the before movement, like go as before as we can, the pre-deployment checks and pre-deployment orchestration, and then how do we standardize on creating an operating layer on top of that? So like a post-deployment or orchestration that hopefully the same approach is to be taken from a governance. Is not just an AI SPM problem, but is an AI governance, need that we need to do, right? Just like HR governance was governing where we brought agents, in that case, whether it's Infosys, Accenture, now we're bringing these agents. And I think we're missing that gap. And people are bringing these agents everywhere. And next thing you know, it's like, well, I have a North Korean agent working for me, right? So it's a paradigm shift. But I think we can go back in time and kind of look at the lessons learned that we did, right? So I really appreciate what you said. Is a combination. It's a journey. There's no easy button here.
Thank you, Tony. Keel, I think you put up a question here. Maybe it'll be good you're on mute. If you want to introduce yourself, a couple of lines, and then you want to ask yourself the question you have about Agentic AI being embedded in enterprise workflows. So there's a question Keel has put on the chat box. Keel, you want to speak up yourself, or you want us to take it on? Okay, he can't speak, so maybe you want to answer. Looks like he's an agent. So Tony, you want to take the question? You're on mute. Tony, you're on mute.
I know. I'm trying to read the question. Hold on.
Okay.
It's just one up. Okay. As agentic AI becomes embedded in enterprise workflows, how are compliance teams approaching AI model documentation for regulation?
That's a total agent speaking. Sorry, I can't speak. I'm working. LOL. That's why I'm saying I gotta start. I just probably have to have an agent here in front of me and just doing this.
I think. Look, the good news is there's a lot of efforts already being done. Right. I was thinking about, what are CISOs to do in that space, and I was looking at what's happening. Right. There's August 2nd is coming up with the EU. It's the first time you have to provide proof. Right. So if I were to tell you from a layout, right, looking what's out there. If you think about a checklist, like most immediately, I think people need to take a asset inventory. We've done this before, right? Asset inventory management has been the key part, right? Whether it's IT, OT, so on and so forth. We've seen that movie. So find your shadow AI problem, look at it against the NIST AI RMF, right? There's a standard against that. Increase the literacy, the training rollout, right? Understand the EU exposure if applies to you. And I think between now and then, the next 2 quarters, think about what ISO 42001 readiness is. Do your gap assessment, procurements, and so on and so forth. Map agentic deployments to the EU AI Act or, the 42001. And then I think continuously go back to OWASP. OWASP has provided a top 10 embedded, in SDLC, right? And there's this idea of per agent identity, the NHI thing that is evolving. There are companies out there trying to solve this problem, right? I think we need to really think about this vibe coder, AppSec posture. We need to move as far before as we can, right? It's a contributor risk that you want to get in front of it. And then good news is also SANS just put out an AI maturity model, right? Which you can do a self-assessment, right? Just like anything else we've done. That just came out, I think, 2 months ago. And then MITRE Atlas is also out there, right? So, in the last 6 months, 7 months, there are some good standards you can do. But again, this is very similar to what we've done from any other vulnerabilities that we've done, right? You take inventory of it, you train your folks understand. You understand the governance and standards are out there. I don't think there's a recipe. It's never been one for security, but it's a due diligence and due care model, right? That would be the list of priorities. I would say most immediately do the inventory, increase the literacy about what does this mean, and then use the standards are try to use the best practices and then apply to best process in your in your organization.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Sanjay, I have here Sanjay also. Sanjay, you have any insights you'd like to share? You're on mute if you want to say something. All right.
No,
So,
Naveen, I don't have anything beyond what
okay.
the panelists have already spoken. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Shifting a gear a little bit. So one question is, how do you feel? I mean, I'd like to have many of the panelists want to take a shot at it. How is it different from cloud and SaaS? If you think about cloud, kind of gave us a clear trust boundary. And so what is the trust boundary for an agent that regions and decides its own step? And with SaaS, the unit of risk was the app. With agent, is it the agent or the action it takes or the identity it borrows? And so it'll be, where does that leave the accountability part? So I don't know, Sumeet, you want to start off with that? You kind of have been in all these what do you call it, inflections or the
Naveen,
change.
this is the biggest problem, right? Like, I mean, you are delegating authority to the agent. That's what Tony, all of us have been talking about. It's an agency problem.
Yeah.
And it's one thing, I mean, yesterday's problems don't go away, unfortunately. So yeah, you have your agent and you've delegated it to do tasks and it has certain rights. But what if there are, vulnerabilities in the agent itself? What if that it can, get there is privilege escalation and it can actually do more than it's supposed to do. And that's where I feel the big challenges come. That's why I feel that this whole space, it needs to move more towards runtime, what we can do in the runtime, what we can secure in the runtime, how we control the behavior of the agents in the runtime, how we audit it, how we control it, how we govern it, and how we can put more and more sophisticated guardrails around it. And I mean, from the developer's perspective, right? I mean, they're going to produce something, they're going to put it out there. They may not be security experts, and they probably are not security experts. So we should assume that everything we are putting out there is vulnerable. That doesn't change. That was true yesterday. It's going to remain true in the future. Yeah, I know we use AI for coding, but there's no evidence yet that the code produced by AI is more secure than code produced by humans. In fact, so much research is showing that it's less secure. And, Anthropic may come up with announcements that, oh, now we can do this, now we can do this, now we can do this. But really, with every announcement, what you're doing is burning more tokens, and at some point, you're going to run out of money for the tokens. So, yesterday's problems don't go away. We still need to follow best practices. We still need to do everything we're doing yesterday and do more on top of it today. So, if from my perspective, if there's one area that we focus more on in the future is the runtime, is how do we audit what are the things that are happening, what the agents are doing, how do we control it, how do we put guardrails around it, and that's really top what I'm thinking, and those are the discussions I'm having.
Thank you. Elissa, do you want to chime in?
Well, I'm really curious actually to know if anyone among the panelists or in the attendees have like product recommendations that they like. We mentioned that we would discuss products, and as a virtual CISO, and I advise many companies, and I have CISO friends. I'm actually really curious if people have things where they actually feel like it's working well, because most of what I hear is that the products still have a long way to go. So if it's okay, I actually just have a question. I'm very curious if anyone has anything where they can say, yes, we have some structure, process, or tool that we actually feel is great.
I'll add a couple of things and then I'll share with you what I know. And now there's a lot. There's a list of 50 of them in the whole AI security. And again, is before, during, and after what you do. But I think that to submit what you said, the other two areas I would venture to say that we need to put more control is these agents, just like any person, they need to connect with your tools, right? You train them when somebody comes and give them access to tools, right? Whether they operate your firewall, your CrowdStrike, or whatever that is. So there's a certain level of governance there. So there's got to be this connectivity, whether it's through MCP or API. So the guardrails need to be built in, right? So if you give an access to an API, make sure that those guardrails are not done just at the API level, but at every method, right? One thing is to give someone API to CrowdStrike and say you can read alerts. Another thing is for you can delete or do something with the IOCs or start making changes. So you should be able to have a very granular control from that level, connecting to your tools layer. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this goes without saying, which is the data, right? The data is the other part of it. So as you connect, just like on a need-to-know basis for agents, human agents, is also on a need-to-know basis. So whether it's RBAC and NHI, whatever, who has access to what and why, the same thing needs to be applied to these agents. Whatever data you take for training, so this is the data intelligence, data governance part of it, garbage in, garbage out, but also just because you give access to someone to their Confluence, you need to make sure that there is a need to know access, and then the data going there's there. So I think data, tools, and obviously the identity, as you mentioned. And then as these guys start talking, Sumeet, I think that API, how they connect, should this talk another, right? There's a segregation of duties. As far as tools, I think that there are a lot of different technologies out there. I mean, I've been looking at many startups. Certainly, I joined one that I was looking for a platform. So, my plug is I work for Airrived, so I'm going to mention that we are a platform, right? And we think about it from a platform perspective, but there are many others that are looking at that way. We went after a vertical that we knew about, which is cyber. Why? Because grounding and guardrails is not a feature in that space. It's a must-have, right? So we built it with those built in, whether it's at that API level and also being able to ground these agents. So yes, you can use LLM. You can define it through a domain-specific language model, define it into be more of an application or SLM model. Then you have to be able to give them objectives and ground them. For instance, let's say if you go look at any agentic SOC solution, a simple way to do it is to be able to ground them and say, look, these people operating these agents, they are in UK, and only these people can operate in IP addresses and assets that are under their jurisdiction. And therefore, by design, avoid having a GDPR problem, right? So only those guys go to that, right? So you can put a grounding technology, a capability, and an objective around it if you're creating a deep mesh, right? There are tools out there that are looking at bringing this NHI problem. One of them just got acquired, right? Most recently in the last week. I think it was Symmetric or something like that, which was acquired, forgot by, I think Zscaler just bought them. You're going to see that. You're going to see this gap, and you're going to see these big players buying more, point products, right? And I think this concept of pinning an identity to an agent and that solving that responsibility, there's many tools out there. They're very smart companies coming from overseas. I've seen companies from Canada coming up, and I've seen companies from Korea and a lot of local companies coming up that are trying to solve that NHI problem. There are companies out there that I've talked to that actually trying to take on this challenge of shift left, right? And make it a shift before. That think of it as a pre-flight checklist. So there's a lot of people trying to go where we haven't been before. And I think they're doing a lot of validation as we speak with the big players that have millions of agents and going back and say, hey, how was this airplane designed? How was this car designed before you put another electric car on the road, right? And then they lose their way when they hit a puddle of water, right? So I think those are some of the ones. I'm more than happy to share others with you probably. But definitely, I try to be in the tech bazaar days, where all this technology is coming up, and we need to move towards more of this standardization, I think. And there's going to be a lot of different power tools that we need to use. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I think we're almost coming towards the end of the time, so I wanted to see anyone else has. Sumeet, you wanna, in terms of the solutions or how of course you have your own solutions, but generally, what have you seen in the market when you look at doing, your own analysis?
I mean, right now it's the Wild West. There are too many solutions, right? I mean, us being one of them, right? There are too many solutions. And I feel organically all of us will arrive at, hey, here is the right way to achieve the desired goal. And yeah, I don't think we're there yet, but we will all arrive there. And the challenge though is that, look, when we are working with customers, they're like at all scales, right? It could be an insurance company, it could be a large bank, it could be a large telecom provider, it could be a fintech, it could be like a 3-person startup. There's just so much out there, so much ground to cover. So maybe perhaps there won't be one model eventually. So I feel it's early days. I feel there's a lot of learning that needs to happen, and we're right in the middle of it. But just going back to what Tony said, right? I mean, right now identity is hot, right? Like we are like, okay, assign rights or roles, whatever that is. But if the systems that they are interacting with, if those systems are incorrect and not correctly, enforcing the roles, then any of this new stuff we're doing doesn't matter. So we have to look at the problem or solving the problem in a holistic way. That's really the way I look at this, right? Yesterday's problems aren't going to go away.
Thank you, Sumeet. So Hiram, Apur, Clint or Andre, anyone else here? Rohan, James, Dr. Pete, Mike, I'm just calling out everyone so that they get an opportunity. Bettina, Son, Keel, if you stop working, you can ask questions or anyone else? All right. Okay, so we'll just close it right on time today, and so that you guys don't start worrying about all the agents. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next month.